Please cooperate with us." In confusion, I handed over the dashboard camera data to the police officer who suddenly showed up at my house. The officer asked me, "Could you review the contents together just to be sure?" When we checked the data together, I never imagined such a thing would be recorded there. I'm Kate. I'm a 30-year-old office worker. I'm undergoing training at the company every day. That's because my father is the company president, and I'm his only daughter. I am to become the next president, so every day I have to undergo his tough training. On such days, I have my husband, Noah, who is 3 years older than me, and my emotional support. Noah is reliable and always supports me in my busy daily life. He's a dependable husband I can count on. Noah is my senior colleague who mentored me when I joined the company. He guided me earnestly and kindly, leading me in an easy-to-understand manner. He was very kind, but also firm and honest when something wasn't right. Since then, he has been a very reliable presence for me. I was increasingly drawn to Noah, and after dating, we got married. Noah's parents seem to have already passed away, as I heard from him that he has no family. Noah looked so lonely when he talked about it, so I suggested that he live with my family. My parents also really like Noah and treat him like a real son. Sometimes, I feel like they cherish him more than me. Actually, I kept quiet about being the president's daughter until I talked about marriage with Noah. I didn't want to make him feel awkward, and although it's an unpleasant topic, I've been cautious because only men interested in money have approached me until now. When I told Noah that I was the president's daughter, he was very surprised, but even after knowing, his attitude towards me didn't change at all, and I envisioned a wonderful future with him, thinking that I could surely build a wonderful family with him. However, reality doesn't always go as planned. I was too busy with training to become the next president that we couldn't have children for a while. My husband would say, it can't be helped, but his actions and expressions showed his inner dissatisfaction. Still, he helps with chores and remains a good husband. I had been taking advantage of his kindness. Just for now, I'm truly sorry. Soon, things will settle down, and then we can think about children, okay? We often discuss this as a couple. One day, I took some time off for a dental checkup. I originally planned to take a half day off, but my father said, take a whole day off and relax. Recharge your energy. So I took a day off. After the dental appointment, I was relaxing at home when suddenly the doorbell rang. I was a little surprised when I saw the person that showed on the intercom. The reason was because there was a police officer standing there. Sorry for this sudden visit. I'm a police officer from the local station. Yesterday, there was a hit-and-run incident in the neighborhood. Could you cooperate with us for the investigation? The police officer showed his ID while making the request through the intercom. I had my doubts on whether it was a scam or not, but it seemed like a genuine police officer. Yes, of course, I said and headed to the entrance. When I opened the door, the police officer showed his ID again. Thank you for your cooperation. Would you mind showing us the data from your car's dashboard camera to help us catch the culprit? I went to get the keys to my husband's car and took out the SD card from the dashboard camera inside the car. Then, I told the police officer, the images on the dashboard camera are small, so I'll bring my laptop. It'll be easier to see. Upon hearing that, the police officer said, thank you. Then, he added, sorry, but could you review the contents with me just to be sure? So, I ended up checking the SD card data together with the officer. The first thing we saw was a normal view of the front of our house. Then, my husband arrived and got into the car. I thought he was probably going for a usual drive. His hobby is going out for drives. He often told me that his car was more precious than anything else, like his treasure. So, I never touched or used it, thinking I didn't want to mess it up. Come to think of it, I hadn't asked where he was going for his drive, so I continued watching the footage with a little excitement. The car started moving, and after a while, it stopped in front of a building I had never seen before. Then, a woman I didn't know casually sat in the passenger seat. What? I couldn't help but shout. The police officer next to me looked embarrassed, and from there, the footage turned into a real hell. My husband and the woman were talking as if they had been close for a long time. He was even talking to her more frankly than to me. I felt jealous in weird ways. Furthermore, as I continued to watch, they talked about places they had been to recently. The food at that place we went to last time was delicious, right? The night view there was amazing. And so on. Their conversation was unbearable to hear. And to top it off, he even said, "I want to stay at that hotel again." From their conversation, I found out that my husband had been having an affair for 5 years. Seeing my distressed expression, the police officer said, "It's okay now. Thank you for your cooperation," he said, seeming apologetic. Actually, it seemed like the police officer was the victim who got involved in an unbelievable situation. After seeing off the police officer, I was just stunned. But I had to accept the reality that my husband was cheating. With such solid evidence, even the worst liar could win the case. How many hours had passed since then? I sat in the living room holding onto that SD card, lost in thought. I didn't even notice when my husband came home. Whoa. I didn't notice you there, Kate. Didn't you turn on the lights? You scared me. With that, my husband turned on the lights and closed the curtains. The usual husband, the usual words of encouragement, the usual care, the usual smile. But I already knew it was all fake. Expressionless, I faced my husband and said, "Can you come to my room for a moment? I have something to show you." Saying that, I pointed the laptop in the bedroom towards my husband and inserted the SD card. Then, I started playing that footage. At first, my husband was calm, but as the footage progressed, his expression gradually stiffened. And when the footage of his mistress getting into the car played, he said, "Why did you suddenly try to play the SD card from the dashboard camera?" His voice trembled, and he seemed very flustered. To that, I said, "Today, a police officer came to the house. He asked for cooperation in a hit-and-run investigation and wanted to see the data from your car's dashboard camera." My husband didn't say anything. So, while we were reviewing the footage together, something like this came up. I really felt sorry for that police officer. "So, can you explain this?" When I asked my husband for an explanation, he surprisingly started talking in detail. It turns out the other woman is a 25-year-old bartender. They met at a bar, and their relationship started from there. He's been having an affair for 5 years now. As he talked, my husband's tone gradually changed. And finally he said, "Well, you know, you're always so focused on work and never pay attention to me. It's unbearable for me." It seems my usual husband had been wearing a mask all this time. Maybe this is the real him. He's completely denying any wrongdoing. It's true that I might have had my shortcomings, but did he ever mention his dissatisfaction to me? I said what was on my mind. It's true that some of it was my fault. You were unsatisfied with that, right? If that is so, then you could have said something. Aren't we a couple? Didn't we promise to talk through things and resolve any issues when we got married? As I held back my anger, my husband replied, "I was trying hard too, you know. Pretending to be a good husband. But you're the president's daughter. You're rich, right? So, I thought life would be a breeze once we got married, but you're just not enough for me." His words really got to me. "So, you were after my money, not me. I see it now. Then let's get divorced." Wait a minute. Divorce? That's not possible. Huh? What do you mean, not possible? When I brought up divorce, my husband's eyes widened. And he started trembling. It seems he didn't expect me to mention divorce. But you love me, right? Are you really planning to divorce me? There's no way you could do that. What he's saying is ridiculous. Apparently, my husband thinks I'm deeply in love with him, and no matter how much he cheats, I'll never mention divorce. It's true that I was in love with him, that's not a lie. But the distrust I feel after this affair is stronger than my feelings of love for my husband. But still, my husband's behavior seemed a bit strange. He's unusually sensitive to the word divorce, and clearly acting suspiciously. Could there be something else he's hiding? I wondered as we continued arguing. Then suddenly, there was a knock on my bedroom door. We hastily stopped our conversation, and I heard my father's voice say, "Can I have a moment? Come to the living room, both of you. There's something important I need to discuss." It was my father. He's calling us out for something to discuss, but I knew. He's clearly angry. We paused the divorce discussion for now, and headed to the living room. My mother was also there. She's actually working as the current secretary, supporting my father both publicly and privately. Despite being a level-headed person, she looks strangely sad. This is definitely not going to be a good conversation. Both of you, sit down over there, urged my father, and we took seats on the sofa as directed. Then, my father began talking to my husband while presenting some documents. Perhaps still agitated from our earlier divorce dispute, my husband looked a bit sullen. I thought once this discussion was over, he'd managed to smooth things over with my parents and avoid divorce. But my husband's plans quickly unraveled. Noah, could you take a look at these documents? Recently, the head of the accounting department contacted me, saying there are some unclear usages of the company's assets. The results of the investigation conducted by experts are documented here. With a brief pause, my father continued in a very calm voice, "You've been embezzling, haven't you?" I've heard this tone in his voice several times before. It's his voice when he's very angry. Confronted with the fact of embezzlement, my husband widened his eyes and remained silent. Honestly, I was deeply shocked too. He probably thought he wouldn't get caught. This is extremely disappointing. I thought of you as my own son, Noah. Kate is the heir to the presidency, but I was planning to offer you a suitable position too. Yet, you chose to betray us like this. There was a brief silence, and the atmosphere in the living room became tense. It was my mother who broke the silence. Come to think of it, I heard you two arguing earlier. Kate, did you know about the embezzlement? Or was there something else? The tension in the room eased slightly. Feeling like I had no choice, I recounted everything that had happened so far. My husband looked like he was in big trouble, and frankly, he deserved it. And this seemed to be the last straw. My father said firmly, "Noah, you're going to have to get a divorce from my daughter, and you're leaving the company. Do you have any objections?" If it had been the Noah who wore a mask until now, he probably wouldn't have objected. But that mask had already shattered. You've got to be kidding me. You guys are ridiculous. It's all ruined. I finally managed to date and marry the president's daughter. I worked hard, volunteered to be a mentor, and made connections, but it's all wasted. While my parents were taken aback by my husband's sudden change, I felt nothing but disgust towards him. He showed no signs of remorse, so there was no choice but to thoroughly punish him now. "Pack up all your stuff right now," I instructed my husband in a flat tone. "Huh? Why?" Ignoring my husband's question, I continued, "No arguments. Or should we head to the police together?" Perhaps overwhelmed by my intimidation, my husband muttered, "Got it," and went to his room to gather his belongings. Facing my parents, I said, "I have a plan." I shared my plan with them, and they quietly nodded. From here on out, we would give Noah a taste of his own medicine. When my husband finished packing, he came back to the living room, and I said, "Ready to go." "Oh, but you'll be riding shotgun, not driving." After loading his belongings into his car and checking he was ready in the passenger seat, I started the engine. Then, facing my husband, I said, "Give me the directions to that woman's house." I drove in silence the whole way to his affair partner's house. My husband directed me to an apartment about a 30-minute drive from home. I got out of the car and contacted my parents. My husband looked at me with a bewildered expression, as if he couldn't comprehend what was happening. "We won't be seeing each other anymore. Since the police will be involved from now on, let's handle things through our lawyers. I'll send the items you couldn't fit in the car by mail later. Even though you've worn a mask all this time, you've still been my support. So, thank you. And goodbye." Saying this to my husband, I left him in the car. My parents arrived right on time to pick me up, so I got in the car and left. My husband was still standing there, frozen. From then on, communication was through lawyers. My husband was sentenced to criminal penalties for embezzlement from my father's company. During the discussions, we found out something else. Turns out, my husband's parents are alive and well, still living happily. The reason my husband told such an insensitive lie about his parents being dead was that he got into gambling before meeting me and ended up squandering his parents' money. He's now been disowned. The amount of money involved was substantial, and he even resorted to borrowing more. Unable to quit gambling even after marrying me, his debts piled up until they were unmanageable. So, he embezzled from the company to pay off his debts. Since my husband had hidden this, he desperately tried to avoid divorce with me. In the end, my husband was sued by my father's company, and in addition to compensation to the company, he was also sued for damages to me. The woman my husband cheated with turned out to be married too. As a result, her husband also demanded compensation from him. It seems like the consequences of wearing the mask of a good person all these years have caught up with him all at once. After all the proceedings were over, we got divorced. My ex-husband had to let go of the car he cherished so much, and now he lives in a company dorm, working at the factory during the day and doing part-time shifts at a convenience store at night, trying to keep up with repaying his debts. However, given the amount of debt, he's considering filing for bankruptcy in the future. As for me, my training to become the next president has been going smoothly, and I'm finally set to take office as the new president next month. Desire is a motivating factor necessary for humans to live. However, excessive desire can lead to one's downfall. Just like my ex-husband. Although I ended up divorced, what I gained from it outweighs the loss. No matter how well one wears the mask of a good person, their true nature will eventually surface. That's why, as the president from now on, every day I plan to strive to obtain the most valuable treasure, trust, without ever wearing a mask. Do you ever hide your true self from others? Revealing your true self indeed requires a lot of courage. However, even a small lie can become a blade that harms yourself when accumulated over time. Lies may be expedient, but use them wisely.